This is the tale of one of America's most notorious criminals, a man whose name became synonymous with terror, deception, and death. A man who was so elusive, so cunning, that he became the stuff of legend. This is the story of Dr. Henry Howard Holmes. Known to history as H. Holmes, he was a doctor, a businessman, and a murderer. But most chillingly, he was a master of manipulation, deceit, and cruelty. Holmes was born on May 16, 1861, in Gilmanton, New Hampshire, under the name Herman Webster Mudgett. From a young age, Holmes showed an unusual interest in medicine. Some say it was his fascination with anatomy that drew him to the study of the human body, while others suggest a more sinister drive. Perhaps it was his dark curiosity about death itself. As a teenager, he was already notorious in his small town. He was known for his charm and intelligence, traits that would serve him well in the years to come. But beneath the polished veneer of a promising young man, something darker simmered. By the time he reached medical school at the University of Michigan in 1882, his unsettling tendencies were becoming more evident. It was during his time at medical school that Holmes began his lifelong obsession with death and deception. Holmes' first brushes with crime came in the form of insurance fraud. He would steal the identities of his deceased patients and forge documents, profiting from their deaths. But that was just the beginning. By 1886, Holmes arrived in Chicago, eager to make his mark, and this is where his story takes a terrifying turn. Chicago in the late 19th century was a city of opportunity. The world's Columbian Exposition, which would open in 1893, was poised to showcase the best of modern innovation and culture. Holmes saw it as the perfect moment to make his fortune, but he didn't plan to profit from the fair itself, not directly. Instead, Holmes set his sights on something far more sinister. In the heart of Chicago, on the corner of 63rd and Wallace Streets, Holmes built his castle. This was no ordinary building. To the untrained eye, it was a grand hotel, complete with shops, apartments, and lavish rooms. But beneath its elegant exterior, Holmes had designed a labyrinth of horror, a death trap for the unsuspecting guests who would stay there. The murder castle, as it came to be known, was a structure of pure malevolence. Holmes had it constructed with secret passageways, trapdoors, and soundproof rooms. The building had rotating doors, stairways that led to nowhere, and rooms with gas lines that could be turned on at will. But the most chilling feature of the castle was the soundproof torture chamber, where Holmes could carry out his dark experiments on his victims. Holmes' true intentions were hidden beneath the guise of a hotel that was designed to profit from the fairgoers attending the exposition. The victims he lured into his trap were often young women, drawn in by the promise of a job or shelter. These women would often vanish without a trace. Some of them were later found dead, their bodies mutilated and disfigured, sometimes buried beneath the very floors of the building. There are some theories Holmes could also be Jack the Ripper, the unidentified serial killer who terrorized London in 1888. The Jack the Ripper murders, which took place in the impoverished Whitechapel district of London, were marked by brutal, ritualistic killings of women, often with their throats slashed and bodies mutilated. While the identity of the Ripper has remained a mystery for over a century, several suspects have been put forward, with Holmes being one of the more compelling contenders. Proponents of the theory argue that Holmes, who traveled extensively, could have been in London during the time of the murders. Additionally, some suggest that the Ripper's style of killing, the surgical precision and post-mortem mutilations, mirrored the methods that Holmes allegedly used on his victims. Holmes was known to have a background in medicine, which could have given him the skill to perform such horrific acts. There are, however, many objections to this theory. One major issue is the timing. Holmes was operating in Chicago during the time of the Ripper murders in London, and there is no concrete evidence that he was in England during that period. Furthermore, the Ripper killings occurred in a specific geographic area, Whitechapel, while Holmes's crimes were spread out across the United States, suggesting that he had different methods of operation. Moreover, the medical knowledge that Holmes possessed may have been more of a general background in surgery, as opposed to the specific skills needed to perform the precise and intimate mutilations attributed to Jack the Ripper. Despite these arguments, the Holmes-Ripper connection remains a popular, albeit speculative theory, fueled by the similarities in the nature of the crimes and the elusive nature of both killers. As with many other Ripper theories, the lack of definitive evidence means that it will likely remain one of the many possible answers to the century-old mystery. Whether or not H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper, the theory serves to highlight the chillingly similar patterns of violence and the complex, often enigmatic nature of serial killers. But what do you think? But it wasn't just women who fell prey to Holmes. His reach extended to many others. He became a master of manipulation, swindling business partners, workers, and even families. He would promise wealth or security, and, when they least expected it, betray them in the most horrific ways. As Holmes's crimes unfolded, the authorities began to close in on him, but he was a ghost, a phantom who could slip through their grasp. It wasn't until 1894 that his reign of terror would begin to unravel. An investigation into a series of mysterious disappearances led to the discovery of Holmes's many crimes. In 1894, Holmes was arrested on charges of fraud. However, it was the discovery of his castle that revealed the full extent of his crimes. Inside the castle, investigators discovered the horrifying evidence of Holmes' twisted mind. They found rooms where his victims had been trapped, suffocated, or tortured. Human bones were unearthed, some belonging to men, women, and children. The chilling truth was becoming clear. Holmes had built his hotel for one purpose only: his own twisted pleasures. He had used his medical knowledge to kill and dispose of his victims in the most horrific ways possible. Holmes was charged with multiple murders, though the exact number remains uncertain. Some estimates suggest that he may have killed as many as 200 people. His trial, which took place in 1895, captivated the public. But despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Holmes was convicted of only one murder: the killing of his business partner, Benjamin Pitzel. The relationship between Holmes and Benjamin Pitzel was both a partnership and a tragic manipulation that played a central role in Holmes's criminal activities. Benjamin Pitzel was a poor, uneducated man with a troubled past. He had been involved in various criminal activities and had a somewhat desperate character, making him an easy target for Holmes, who was a master manipulator. Holmes, often described as a charming yet cold sociopath, took advantage of Pitzel's weaknesses to carry out his schemes. Pitzel and Holmes first crossed paths in the early 1890s, when Holmes was operating in Chicago. Pitzel, who had been working as a carpenter and struggling to make ends meet, became involved in a business venture with Holmes. Holmes promised Pitzel financial prosperity if he helped him with various tasks. Over time, Holmes' manipulations deepened, and he convinced Pitzel to take part in a fraudulent insurance scheme. The scam was part of Holmes' broader pattern of deceit, wherein he would manipulate people into taking out large life insurance policies that Holmes would later benefit from by faking the deaths of those involved. The most chilling aspect of their relationship emerged in 1894, when Holmes orchestrated Pitzel's death as part of the insurance scam. He killed Pete Zell, staged his death to appear as an accident, and collected a large sum of money from the life insurance policy. However, the plot unraveled when Pete Zell's wife became suspicious of Holmes and his behavior. In an even more grotesque twist, Holmes went on to manipulate Pete Zell's children, using them as part of his deadly plans. Holmes's relationship with Pete Zell ultimately ended in betrayal and murder, demonstrating the extent of his cruelty and lack of empathy. Holmes was sentenced to death, and on May 7, 1896, he was executed by hanging. His death marked the end of one of the most notorious criminal careers in American history, but the legacy of H. Holmes lives on, haunting the dark corners of history and inspiring a chilling tale of a man who hid in plain sight, a man who thrived in a city of progress, all while hiding his secrets in the shadows. Holmes's castle was eventually destroyed in 1938, but the stories of his heinous acts still echo through the annals of true crime history. From his twisted psychology to his terrifying methods, H. Holmes remains one of America's most infamous criminals. Thank you for joining us as we peeled back the layers of history's darkest tales. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for more chilling stories. Until then, stay vigilant. You never know who or what might be hiding in plain sight.